Welcome, everybody, back to America's Finest Sports. Today, we're going to be talking about the MLB. I think this is the first official only MLB episode, not including the Padres. But we're going to be talking about the MLB, going to be talking about a few different teams, actually quite a bit of American League talk. We're going to be talking about the Yankees, kind of where they've been at with their recent skid. I'm going to talk about the Tony La Russa news. Going to talk about the Cinderella story of the Baltimore Orioles, because I think that is a very, very intriguing one. And then finally, we'll wrap it up and we'll talk about, both leagues, and we'll talk about our overall MLB playoff predictions of who we think is going to make it into the playoffs. So with that said, let's get into the Yankees. As we know, they've been slumping quite a bit lately. So I got Maddox in the middle here and Ryan on the other side. Maddox, why don't you start off? What are you feeling about the state of the Yankees right now, post Joey Gallo trade?
Yeah, so the Yankees really thought that they had moved on from the curse of Joey Gallo. He was terrible with them, but they've just been really bad since they traded him. A lot of it is injuries. Sevy going down. He was one of their better pitchers at the time. He's out, as well as Nestor Cortez. They're probably second or third best guy, depending on how you want to look at it. He's out, 15-day IL. And again, Chapman out as well, 15-day IL. Michael King, Albert Abreu, Zach Britton, Chad Green. Those are all bullpen guys that have been out. Just as it's tough to win when you have high quality players on the injured list. Clay Holmes, kind of the story of the first half. 0.45 ERA at one point, I think. But since then, it's just been getting lit up. We'll have to see if Chapman, when he comes back, if he'll be able to compete for that closer spot again. That's just the pitching side of things. On offense, Matt Carpenter is out. He, before getting injured, was very, very important to them, as well as a guy that they acquired and expected to be very good for their outfield defensively, Harrison Bader, out 60-day IL. It's tough. And, Stanton just came back. They were really thinking he was going to change things, but then they dropped a series to the Angels. Angels are one of the worst teams right now. It's just tough to see the Yankees struggle this mightily after such a great first half. That's the good thing about getting a huge lead in the first half is if you choke a little bit, other teams have to claw their way up to catch you. They still have a 6.5 game lead. If some guys get healthy, they start playing better, they should be fine, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. I'm not too worried about the Yankees um, coming back and winning some baseball games because, like you said, there's a lot of injuries, especially on the pitching side. Quick little story about how the Yankees kind of got into a worse position than they should be right now. I believe the plan for them at the trade deadline was they were going to move Jordan Montgomery for Harrison Bader and put him in center field, and then they were going to swing a trade for Pablo Lopez from Miami. And they were in kind of a bidding war with the Dodgers over Lopez, but I believe the Yankees had the upper edge, and they were holding off, like trading, like I think they got like a few really good shortstop prospects. One of them just got called up, but they were holding them back from like the Montas trade and some of the other deals they were talking about because they were going to get Pablo Lopez and have him be, the number 3 starter behind Cole and Frankie Montas. And they pulled off that Jordan Montgomery trade, and then at the very last second, Marlins ownership vetoed any trade involving Pablo Lopez and took every deal off the table. So that really screwed them over because obviously having a guy like Jordan Montgomery, how good he's been for the Cardinals, if he was on the Yankees, that's potentially 4 or so wins that they could easily get back from how well he's been performing over in St. Louis. But, I think their bullpen's kind of out of whack right now. The offense is slumping at a bad time. I think it's just bad timing for everything. There's obviously a ton of talent on that team. They have the best hitter in baseball. So I think they just need to get some of those pitchers back, get Nestor Cortez back. I don't think Sevy's coming back, but, just get everything back to where it should be, especially in that bullpen. And I think there's going to be no issues for them going forward once that happens.
Yeah, and this is a team that, you usually look at the Yankees and the big reason that they're winning is just crazy slugging. You look at them, you say, okay, you got Judge, you got Stanton. Now Judge is obviously having a phenomenal year, but Stanton has not really had a great season, and he's been, I feel like, underwhelming more than not on the Yankees. But for this Yankees team this year, it's all about the starting pitching. Their starting pitching has been elite, and if you lose 3 of your 5 starters, you're not going to win games. Ryan and I are Padres fans. We saw the Padres season completely collapse last year because the exact same thing happened where they only had 1 to like 3 starters for that whole second half of the season. So the good thing for the Yankees, and you guys brought this up, but when you have such a big lead on your division, and also not like their division isn't competitive, there's 3 teams that are vying for a playoff spot in it, but they do have a big gap. I mean, they're up 6 games right now, 6 or 6.5. I forgot what you said. But there's a month left of the season. I feel like if you would have asked Yankee fans, the trade deadline a couple months back, and you said, hey, you're going to be up 6 games here, they would be like, well, what happened? Because apparently our team just completely fell apart. So I do think there's like reason to be concerned because you're kind of just waiting on guys to come back. But if Nestor Cortez comes back and if Jordan Montgomery, is he back right now? Like, I don't think he's on an IL technically. So I think he should be back soon, or at least
He is
should
on
be
the
back.
Cardinals right now.
Oh, who did I say? Servino, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
He's not coming back, right?
Probably
No.
not.
Okay. But Cortez will. So at least you have Cortez. At least you have those 3. I don't know. I mean, I still have faith if they have their pitching, but that's been like the backbone of their team this whole season. So you got probably the MVP. I don't know if he should be the MVP, but he's probably going to come home with the MVP. And the roster, like the lineup's still good. I don't think there's bad. I know there's a couple guys that are getting ripped a ton. But I mean, overall, it's still not that bad. Rizzo's actually had a really good year. I probably wouldn't have expected Rizzo to be this good heading into the season just because he hasn't been that great in his past few seasons. But I still think that they're legit contenders. I just think it's one of those things where if you lose your pitching and they do not come back in time, you're not going to really have that great of a chance come playoff time. So it's literally all for them is just banking on guys coming back from injury. But anything else you guys want to add to the Yankees?
Yeah. Also, with this year's new playoff format, all they have to do is finish second in the AL, and they get a first-round bye. That gives an extra about 5 days, 5-6 days for guys to get healthy. That could be huge. So in that locker room, they're kind of looking forward to that, and that's something they're playing for. I think they're about they're at 79 wins, and they basically just have to win their division to get that second spot because the Guardians are in first place in the Central with 68 wins, so they got 11 games there, and then of course the Astros are first in the West, and they're up about 5 games on the Yankees for the first seed. So looking good for them to have that first round bye, which could be prove fruitful for them to get some guys healthy.
Yeah, so I think that's probably going to do it for the Yankees. Then we can keep talking about this division though. Let's talk a little bit about the Baltimore Orioles. Much different scenario than the Yankees, just because this is a team that's not supposed to be any good. This is a team that's consistently in last place. They sell at the deadline, and what do you know? They're still in the mix. It's a Cinderella story for the Orioles so far this year. And before we got on, Maddox and I were just kind of looking at everyone's numbers, just like no one's really that good. They have a great bullpen. Their lineup it's not bad. I wouldn't say it's bad because it's pretty consistently but no one is standing out. No one has over an 800 OPS. Now the big thing that has changed is since Adley Rutschman came to this team, they have been dramatically better. And even though they sell, they trade Trey Mancini at the deadline, they've still been good. And they're only a couple games back from the wild card spot right now. I believe it's like 3 or 4, I want to say. So not too far back from the wild card spot. But do you guys think there's any chance that they actually make the playoffs?
Let Maddox go first.
It'll kind of just depend. The AL is looking kind of weird right now. They would have to catch the Blue Jays, only about 2 games back. I'll have to look and see how often they play the Blue Jays over the next month. But something to look out for is the Orioles at home. At home this year, they're 37-24 versus on the road, they're 31-37. So, it's all just going to depend on can they play better on the road throughout this final stretch. And then, just their road slumps makes me really question if they do make the playoffs, how far they can make it, because they will be making it as a wild card team, and they will be making it by playing that first round on the road, majority of those games. So, can they even win a series if they make it? I highly doubt it. They just don't have the star power to contend with even, I don't even think the Guardians. So we'll just have to see. I would say no on playoffs for now. The real highlight of this team is its bullpen, but it's kind of lacking in the starting pitching department. Do you have a guy that you can throw out on the mound that can win you a game in the playoffs? And they just don't have that, in my opinion. So I'm going to say no on the playoffs. And if they do make the playoffs, I highly doubt they win that first round.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say no playoffs, but first off, yeah, we'll talk about like the makeup of the roster. They are incredibly average. That is the best way I can describe them. That is how they win games. It's the fact that they are so average that they just consistently perform exactly the same every single game, and by sheer luck, they just win baseball games. It doesn't make any sense. You don't look at this team and be like, "Oh, there's the star performer." Like, yeah, like Adley is pretty good for a catcher, and Anthony Santander's okay for an outfielder, but like it's just the fact that everyone's kind of like a 700 to 800 OPS hitter, and all the pitchers in the rotation have like a 4.2 ERA, to where like they're just so incredibly average that they somehow manage to formulate wins out of that. But looking at this team going forward, that's more what I want to talk about, not necessarily if they can make the playoffs or how they're going to do if they even make them, because their starting pitching is terrible. Even if you look at past the ERA, they give up a lot of hits, don't strike a lot of guys out. But I'm really impressed with how they've built this roster. They've developed some good pitchers that I think that even if they're not performing that well right now, I think Dean Kramer and Tyler Wells have futures in the middle to bottom of their big league rotation. John Means is out, obviously, which makes this even more incredible. But, he's going to come back in the future. He's a very, very solid number 3. They got Grayson Rodriguez and DL Hall, who have been phenomenal in their farm system, have great stuff, and they could easily be up there in the rotation. And the way they develop relief pitching is unbelievable. They traded Jorge Lopez to the Twins, and he was their closer. In hindsight, that probably wasn't a great move for them long term. But even then, Felix Bautista just steps in and takes over. And, he's pumping 101 with a great splitter. CNL Perez has been great this year. Dylan Tate's been great this year. And I feel like that's a really, really good recipe for continued success for this team. They just got to keep taking chances on guys. They have a formula in place where they have been able to develop and really fix guys that come over from other organizations and turn them into good arms in the bullpen. So I just keep leaning on that. Get Colton Hauser up, or shit, I can't even remember his name. They just brought up Gunnar Henderson. They have Adley Rutschman up. Just build that core. Don't be too aggressive yet. And I think you could be looking at a really, really good team in the future. I'm just extremely impressed with how they've been able to win games with what they have now. And I think if that continues in the future and they add from within, they're going to be a really good team.
Yeah, and piggybacking on that, this year, the next 30 days, they play the Blue Jays 10 times in the next 30 days. 7 of those games are at home. So if they are going to make the playoffs, they've got to win 7 of those 10 games, I think, in order to even have a chance. But it's really tough because they do play the Yankees still. And a lot of those games are against the Yankees, Astros, Red Sox, and Blue Jays going forward. So they're going to have to beat good teams to make the playoffs. So they're going to have to, play good against good teams.
Yeah, and you guys were talking about a little bit about the bullpen too. And it's funny. I was about to bring up, dude, they play the Blue Jays a bunch. Like they control their own destiny technically. They also do have some easier games. Like they play like the Nationals, the A's a few times. But anytime you're in that division, it's just you just have your work cut out for you. I didn't look at like how many home versus road games they have for the rest of their stretch, which I think you brought up the home and road splits. Like that's got to be a huge factor. Their team bullpen ERA is fourth in the league, fourth in the entire MLB. And you brought up a guy, Felix Bautista. Dude, if you guys haven't watched this guy play, I highly recommend going and watching a highlight video because he is so nasty. And really anyone that's kind of came into their bullpen, like pretty much any of their guys have pitched well. And if they or I would say have pitched at least average. And if they haven't been average, they've probably been close to elite. So it's been ridiculous how good their bullpen has been. But also like their offensive roster, I don't think you brought up the starting pitching. The starting pitching numbers are not good. Not really good at all. And that's why I don't think a lot of people have had faith in this team. But even their offense, their outfield's pretty solid. Austin Hayes, Cedric Mullins, Anthony Santander. Now, none of those guys individually are going to like blow you away. Like, oh, wow, they have Anthony Santander. But all three of them pretty solid. And then they have a couple other decent pieces. Calling up Gunnar Henderson has been big. He's only played a little bit, but it could be big, I guess, down the stretch. I brought up Rushman already. I think he's going to be one of the better catchers in the league for many years to come. Mountcastle not really having the best year, but not the worst player. Like their infield's not great, but their outfield's strong. They have some solid pieces, and they've basically just been winning off the back of their bullpen. So I also agree with you guys. I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs. Now, it would be absolutely hilarious if they made the playoffs over the Blue Jays and the Red Sox. Like that would be something. That'd be one of the best storylines of the entire MLB season. But yeah, they're hanging in there. I don't know how long they're going to be able to keep this up. But I think moving forward, I think they have a much better future than I think a lot of people kind of expect. I feel like you kind of when you talk about the Orioles, you kind of think of like teams like the Pirates, like teams that are not good organizations. But they have some guys that are part of their future, and it looks like they're developing the bullpen well. If they can get a decent enough starting rotation, they might be able to hang in the AL. And with the new expanded playoffs, a lot of teams that aren't that great the MLB adding a couple playoff spots, they're going to have a chance to make the playoffs. So I think that's kind of where you're looking at with this team. Is it's definitely not for this year, even if they do make the playoffs. Though that would be kind of nice for some of these younger guys, to get some experience under their belts. But I think kind of for the Orioles, it's a little bit of like, oh, they kind of shocked everyone. And if you look forward at this team, hey, like there's some positive stuff going on there. So that's probably all I have on the Orioles. But anything else you guys want to touch on?
Yeah, like you said, they kind of control their own destiny. 19 games at home, 12 on the road. So if they continue at the same pace, they could do it. I don't think it's going to happen. But like you said, it would be ironic if they did make it. A majority of their games to end the season are against the Yankees, the Astros, the Blue Jays, and the Red Sox. So those are, what's going to make it ironic is beating those teams.
I've got nothing to add. I got a window right in front of me, and it's like it looks like I got a sniper just like pointed at my chest, waiting to figure out who I'm going to say is going to make the playoffs. So, yeah. So let's continue as this thing slowly moves up towards my face.
All right. So next topic to get to here, Mr. Tony La Russa is now out on medical leave. So Tony La Russa, I don't think it's been disclosed yet of what he has, but he is out indefinitely. And this is a White Sox team that has been pretty disappointing. They were a team that should have been in the playoff mix. They're kind of already not truly eliminated, but they're basically eliminated. So what do you guys think of the recent Tony La Russa stuff? and really just kind of the state, like where the White Sox are at right now.
Yeah, I mean, you hate to kick a guy while he's down, but I never liked the Russa signing to begin with. Um, I like he was good back in the day, but now he's 77. Clearly made like blatant coaching gaffes throughout the season, missing substitutions, pulling guys too late, pulling guys too early, just clear coaching gaffes throughout the entire season. I mean, he's had fans coach the team and scream at him from the stands and him make a decision based on that. It just why are fans thinking of decisions before you even are? There have been rumors of him like asleep in the dugout. Like it just, if the guy's having medical issues, it's best that he steps away permanently. Like let someone new take over. It clearly wasn't working to begin with. This team had high expectations to start the season. They have a great roster, in my opinion. Kind of the same situation. Well, a little bit less than the Yankees, but a lot of injuries this year. Eloy, Robert, of course, Kopech, Crush It, who's been good in their bullpen. Boomer, it's been a long season. Yohan Moncada, Tim Anderson, both out right now. Huge infield pieces. And Moncada, when they first brought him up, it was really the thought of him being their generational third base talent. And it just hasn't developed that way, which is quite unfortunate because he did have a bright future ahead of him. But injuries and poor performance have really hindered his development. It's really tough to see a team with such high expectations fail so miserably.
Yeah, you gotta feel bad for the guy, now that he's having health issues. But bottom line, the White Sox, they came in considered to be the second best team in the AL, and everyone's just kind of underperformed, other than Dylan Cease and a couple other guys. But they're just not getting it done, and it's one of those situations where you look at the team and you have to assume that maybe there's an issue with the clubhouse, or maybe it is the manager at fault. But it's a team where, if you look at them on paper, they should be winning not just more games than they are, but a lot more games. They should be right now where the Astros are. And it hasn't happened for them. They made a lot of big moves to bolster the bullpen. They brought in can't speak English, Tony La Russa, and it just hasn't gone their way. Every single turn, just and at this point, I don't even know what to say about them, because you look at their roster and how stacked it was coming into this year, and just for so many people to underperform, you have to assume it's something deeper than just what you're seeing on the field. It has to be the processes in the clubhouse. Maybe it's something analytical. Maybe it's the culture in the dugout, but they've got to fix it, because their farm system is not very good. They're starting to lose control on guys. Their payroll's getting up there, and if they don't turn this around, not just this year but in the next coming years, it's going to be really bad. It's going to be a big downfall, because there's not a lot of reinforcements coming. They got to win now with this group, or else it's a long way down from where they are now.
Yeah, and you bring up some of the clubhouse stuff and like the question marks in terms of like how they're using analytics and stuff. And I believe that they're one of the lowest staffed in terms of having like an analytics staff. They're one of the lowest, if not the very lowest team in terms of analytics. So that does, I think, play a large factor into them underperforming. And you guys are already talking about it, them being, coming into the season as, I think it was Ryan, you said the second best team in the AL. Dude, if you look at the roster, they are really good. And they even have guys that are playing well this season too. Like Yasmani Grandal has over a 900 OPS, right? Tim Anderson over 800 OPS. Luis Robert over almost 1,000 OPS. Like a lot of these guys, and I do get that they've had injuries. I remember Tim Anderson. The guys have been banged up throughout the season, But even their starting rotation looks pretty good. They have Hendricks as their closer. Like, you just look at their team and you're expecting that they're gonna be playing really well. And I haven't really been following like in terms of like the AL standings that much, but I remember they were pretty close to them, and the Twins were for quite some time. And we were going to do a little bit of research for these segments today, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, they fell off a cliff. Like, how did they fall off a cliff? That's the question where you're looking at, you're like, this shouldn't be the case. So in terms of them, they definitely are a team that needs to flip the script and maybe just kind of clean house, because not really using analytics in today's game is just going to burn you. Not having, like this higher level staff, like we've already seen all the teams that do really well have the best staffs in the sport in terms of coaching staff, analytics staff, whatever that is. And it seems like that's where the White Sox are lacking, because if you're looking at the roster, you're not going to see a lacking roster there. You're going to see a lot of talent. You're going to see talent in the pitching department. You're going to see talent in the bullpen, talent in terms of offense, in terms of batting average, on base, and slugging. Like, you have it all with this team. And yet right now, as we're recording this, I believe they're one game under 500. So that's about as big, like a disaster of a season as you can have. So rough stuff overall for the White Sox. And I do hope Tony La Russa's health improves. You never want to see that with anyone. But I think when you look at this whole White Sox season, it's like, could it have gone any worse? No, probably not. This is probably about as bad as it could have gone. So I think that's all I got for the White Sox. Is there anything else you guys want to add about Tony La Russa and this team before we hop into these MLB playoff predictions?
Yeah, just kind of touching on what you had said. Grandal actually has a 570 OPS. He's having a horrible year. I talked a little bit with you before about Major League Baseball messing with the baseballs from year to year. I think this kind of touches, I don't think Grandal fell off this hard statistically and with his talent wise. But last year, 940 OPS, 240 average, 23 home runs, 62 RBIs in just 93 games. This year so far, 15 less games, he has 3 home runs, a 20 home run difference in 15 less games. That is just ridiculous. Like, I don't know if it's him falling off a cliff or if Major League Baseball is actually deadening the balls for this season. I think it may be a good combination of both. But you look at their roster and they have guys who are, you think in your head are perennial 25, 30, 35 home run guys. Jose Abreu being one of them. You could put Robert in that category. You could put Eloy in that category. You could put Tim Anderson, 20-ish, 22 home run kind of guy. They will be really lucky if they have a single guy hit 20 this year. Their current team leader is Andrew Vaughn, and he has 15, and we have a month to go. I think they would be really lucky to have a guy hit 20, and a lot of that is injury. Robert's only played 90 games this year. Eloy, 56. Yoan, only 80. Anderson, only 75. Like, these guys just haven't been on the field. Yosmani, 76. It's just hard to win when your stars aren't on the field.
Yeah, and also scratch all those stats I just said. Those were the 2021 stats. So if you want to see good stats of what you should have expected this year, then those stats were correct. But not only did Yasmani Grandal completely fall off a cliff, but these other guys didn't fall off. But Luis Robert, I brought up that he had a 900 OPS, and that was last season. He's a little bit below 800. And he's only played 90 games, like you just said, 90 games, like 80 games for a lot of these guys. But even Tim Anderson is not much over a 730 OPS. So like he hasn't been, even their star players haven't produced like they did last year, and they haven't been quite there. So definitely big time struggles across from this whole team. And I feel like, I don't know.
And then even like huge acquisition pitchers that they've had the last couple of years, like you look at Lance Lynn. They really expected him to be basically 1A or a really high quality too. And he's only thrown 84 innings this year, 4.70 ERA, only 15 games. Like, they're just not getting what they expected out of a lot of these guys. Giolito, same kind of situation. When, last couple of years, you expect him to be a 1A, really good too. and he's got a 5.3 ERA. It's just really tough when your stars don't perform.
Yeah, and that's basically what's happened across the board for them. So I think it's time. Let's get into these MLB playoff predictions. So since
Can
we've
I
been
just
talking
say
about
something?
the AL,
Can I
since we've
just
been
say
talking about
something
the
real
ALs,
quick?
yeah, go ahead.
Between you accidentally reading the 2021 stats and me trying to dodge the fucking sun the whole time, that was the unintentionally most funniest fucking segment we've ever recorded. That was great.
I think it was. I think it was.
All I need to do is play more music to get us demonetized, and we are rolling, boys.
Yeah,
All right,
so
let's get to the fucking playoff predictions.
yeah, so looking at these playoffs, well, let's start with the NL because we've just been talking about the AL so much. You look at the NL, I feel like most of it is in place. Maybe a couple questions on who's going to win some of these divisions. But what are you guys thinking? NL playoffs, who are your teams? Who are the division winners? Who's in the wild card? And let's not get too deep into like who's going to make it all the way, but what are you guys kind of thinking right now with how the NL is laid out and who's going to end up making the playoffs?
I think the divisions are pretty much set. Dodgers up huge in that division. I think what are they 17 games on the Padres now? And you got the Mets there in the East. They're up about 4 games. I'm really high on the Mets this year. I kind of think that they might be one of the only teams that can contend with the Dodgers, other than maybe the Braves. One of the only teams that has the pitching and the offense to contend with them. So I think the Mets hold on to the division, and then in the Central, St. Louis is up 7 games on Milwaukee. So I really think that they'll hold on, or 6 games. I really think they'll hold on to that as well. Not only have they been performing higher than the expectation, they've been performing to the point where you look at that team and you say, if someone else knocks out the Dodgers, they could have a chance to go all the way. And with the wild card, other people might have different opinions here, but I think that is set as well, as long as the Padres can play well against the Dodgers. But I think that last spot is really contingent on how San Diego plays against these really good teams this month.
So my wild card, my playoff predictions are going to be more or less the same. Obviously, the Dodgers are going to win the NL West. Spoiler alert. The Mets are playing extremely well right now. They just got Jacob deGrom back. I believe they just beat the Dodgers in the last series. I think that game just ended. St. Louis made an outstanding trade to get Jordan Montgomery, who's pitched really well for them. I think that was one of the like sneaky good moves of the deadline. We talked about it when we were talking about the Yankees, but they needed another impact starting pitcher, and not only did he come over, but he has pitched like a playoff pitcher. So in the wild card, obviously you got Atlanta is pretty much a lock to make it at this point. I think the Phillies look really good. They have a solid rotation. They got a really good lineup. But for the last wild card spot, I don't even know if I'm ready to make a call on that, because like you said, it all comes down to how the Padres play against specifically the Dodgers. And last time we saw them play the Dodgers with pretty much the same team, they got embarrassed. And that's not really anything new. We've been getting embarrassed by the Dodgers for decades at this point. But, we're coming up on the next series against them, and it's Yu Darvish versus Dustin May, who I don't think we ever hit Dustin May well. I'm not sure who that. I think it's Urias versus Clevenger in the second matchup. And then
Manaea.
Sean.
No, it's Manaea
Yeah.
on Saturday. Does it chalk that one up as an L?
Yeah. So we've already got an automatic loss in Sean batting practice Manaea going out on the mound. And we play them a bunch more times after that. But at the same time, Milwaukee doesn't exactly have the easiest schedule either. So it's really a toss-up, because I think the Padres are going to lose a lot of games this month, but it's all dependent on does Milwaukee, lose more? They've got a bit of an easier schedule, but they haven't exactly been the most clutch team. They beat the Dodgers in a series, but they lost a series to the Pirates earlier this year. So it's a toss-up. If I had to guess right now, I'll go with the Padres. Why not? But I think Milwaukee has a serious chance of coming back up and taking it from them just because of how poorly the Padres have played against the Dodgers. But we'll see.
Yeah, and you're bringing up those Padres Dodgers matchups being really important for the Padres. They play 9 more times, and that's why there's an emphasis on that, is because we got a little over a month left of baseball, and you're playing a team almost like a third of your games. So if the Padres are going to make the playoffs, they need to at least take 3 or 4 out of those series. And the issue is that they haven't. They've been losing 2-1 in those series, or they've been getting swept consistently for about a season now. Because early on in 2021, they were playing the Dodgers really well. They had like a huge lead in the season series between the two, and then it's kind of started to fall off. So I think that's probably that's one of the big factors. Now, luckily, the Padres have been playing a lot better. They've probably been playing their best baseball in this past couple weeks than they have in maybe 3 months. So I think that's another huge factor. The Brewers also look kind of dead inside since they kind of sold this deadline. That's the other thing is and I kind of thought, okay, maybe the Giants would make a little run. The Giants have completely fallen off the table. They are over 10 games back from that wild card spot. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that wild card plays out. I think for the division winners, it's the 3 teams that are winning each of those divisions: the Mets, the Cardinals, and the Dodgers. For the wild card, I don't know exactly who's going to be 1, 2, 3. I mean, the Braves will be 1, and I think you're probably going to have the Phillies and the Padres in those other 2 spots. I don't know who's going to be 2 and who's going to be 3. But the Brewers could also make a little bit of a run. Now, the thing is, they have a pretty light schedule for these next couple weeks, and then their schedule gets really hard. So that's going to kind of depend. I think in 2 weeks, the Brewers might even be in a playoff spot, and they might end up losing that playoff spot. So it's a little weird for how this is going to turn out. It's going to be kind of a roller coaster in terms of the wild card for the last 2 spots in that wild card race for the NL. But outside that NL, it's kind of calm. It's kind of mellow because we're about to talk about the AL in a second. And the AL is completely different because it feels like it feels like there's very few teams that are honestly even eliminated at this point. But there's only about, a couple spots that are kind of being fought over in the NL. But that's all I got on the NL. Anything on the NL before we head over to the AL right now, guys? All right, awesome. So AL playoff predictions, what are you guys thinking? We could start with Ryan this time, and then we'll come back over to Maddox to switch it up a little bit here.
All right. So AL East, I'm going to take the Yankees still. I mean, I think that this really bad stretch that they're on right now, I think it's really coming to an end. I think, they're going to start getting some arms back pretty soon, and they're going to start playing the game that they've been able to play, the early part of the season. And I think they're going to really bolster their hold on the divisional lead. In the Central, that's really tough, but I'm going to go with Cleveland here. No particular reason. I think it's really a toss-up in the Central. But Cleveland has some pretty solid starting pitching. So, that's normally where I lean when it's kind of a toss-up between 2 different teams. Jose Ramirez has obviously been really good. They've had some guys step up, especially the 2 shortstops that they got for Francisco Lindor. Josh Naylor's been really nice. They have a surprisingly good core in the middle of their lineup. And obviously, if you've been watching them the past month or so, the back 3 or 4 in their bullpen has been just nasty leading up to Emmanuel Clase. So I think they've got a playoff team written all over them. I think, they'll take a little bit of a chunk out of the Twins in terms of coming after them. And then in the West, obviously, I'm going to take Houston. They have a really deep rotation, really good lineup, solid bullpen. I don't see any way Seattle can come from 11 games back and take the division there. In the wild card, I'm going to go with Tampa Bay as the first wild card team. They just find ways to win games, really. They're really creative with how they use their pitching. They never have really had the best lineup, but they find ways to manufacture runs. They've got some solid pitchers in the rotation. they know how to utilize them. So, I mean, I'm going to take them as the first wild card team. Second wild card team, I'm going to take the Minnesota Twins. Um, they still have a pretty solid team. Carlos Correa, Byron Buxton, guys like that. They can definitely hit. So I think they'll make the playoffs as well. Some decent pitchers in the rotation too. And also, Johan Duran is, in my opinion, the second best closer in baseball, and soon to be first if Edwin Diaz somehow falls off. He is unbelievably good. Threw the first 100-mile-per-hour off-speed pitch in the history of baseball the other day. Like, people don't realize how quickly that guy's going to rise up and become one of the best closers in baseball. And then for the third wild card team, I'm going to go with Seattle. I'm not really sold on their offense. Obviously, Julio Rodriguez has been really, really good. But, a lot of guys in that lineup have completely fallen off. I don't really think they're going to be a great hitting team. However, they've got a great rotation. And a lot of people don't really realize that. Obviously, they got Luis Castillo. Robbie Ray hasn't been that great, but, he's still there towards the top. And, they got other guys, Chris Flexen. Bullpen's not really bad either. They got Paul Sewald and Andres Munoz, among others. So I can definitely see them taking that other wild card spot. I don't think they're going to be the first wild card team. I think they're going to kind of temper out, but I think they definitely make the playoffs.
Yeah, piggybacking on that, my playoffs are a little bit different in the AL. Like you said, the Twins Guardians is kind of a toss-up. So I'm going to go with the Twins, to win the Central. Just because it's a toss-up and I like their roster better. The standings in the East are pretty much set, in my opinion. I think the Yankees are pretty much a lock to make the playoffs and to win the division at this point. And then same over there in the West with the Astros. But because my divisions are a little bit different than yours, I have my wild cards a little bit different. I actually am going to take the Mariners to have that first wild card spot and have the highest wild card seating. I really like what they have done with their roster. Great mix of young talent with proven older. I wouldn't necessarily say proven, but older guys who can hit for pop. That's always a good plus. Of course, Julio Rodriguez is like one of the best shows in baseball right now. Very hard to root against him. They have a good young catcher as well. I really like Cal Raleigh, great pop, as well as, he's okay behind the plate. Definitely, I feel like a good leadership piece. And then that the rotation and their back into their bullpen, I think, is solid enough. Just moving forward, I think some of the other teams have harder schedules. And so I'll take the Rays with that second spot. It really honestly could go either way there. And then with my last spot, I really think the Blue Jays hold on. I'm a big believer in their offense. Vladdy, down here for a lot of their guys. Biggio hasn't really turned out to be the piece they thought he was going to be. I think that they have a good team behind them, solid rotation, could be better. That's why I really think that's going to be their limitation moving forward throughout the playoffs. But Barrios, Gossman, Manoah, that's a great front three. Stripling's been decent behind them as well. But we'll see how the back end holds up throughout this last month, as well as their bullpen could be a little bit better. But I really like the Blue Jays offense. It's hard to beat an infield of Bichette, Merrifield, Guerrero, and Chapman. That's a pretty freaking good infield. One of the best in the AL, I think. And I think that they'll hold on to that spot. So the only thing I really think that changes from today is Mariners pass the Rays in the standings, and the Twins will go ahead and win their division.
So I got a pretty similar layout to you, Maddox. I also am going to have the Twins winning that division, and it's not that I think that they're like significantly better than the Guardians or anything like that, but honestly, they just have a much easier schedule. If you look at like
Way
who they're
easier.
playing,
Yeah, it's actually insane.
Like they're playing, it's not bad at all down the stretch. One thing that is interesting though is they actually play the Royals 6 times in the season, which I did not think that you could even do. Maybe that's because of the not shortened season, but the adjusted season. So I think that's probably why that's how it's ending off. But I mean, that's great for the Guardians to go and play the Royals 6 times to close out the year. But I do think that the Twins are going to end up taking that division. A lot of head-to-head games between those two teams, so I think that's going to be the decider there. And then we keep looking at these divisions. Yankees, I think that they're a lock. Astros, I think pretty obvious they're a lock. But then we go into the wild card. I don't know who's going to necessarily be the 1 and the 2 in the wild card, but I think it will be the Rays or the Mariners, either way you put that. And then I think it's kind of tough for that third wild card spot because you have the Blue Jays and the Orioles in the East, and they play a lot of head-to-head games. So that's going to put one of them clearly in front of the other team if one of them wins like a 6 or 7 of those. I think it's like 6 or 7 of those 10 games, I think it is, that they have left. So that's going to be a huge deciding factor. And then the other one, of course, is the Guardians or the Twins if they don't make it. But that team probably has a little bit better of a chance just because they're not playing the same teams in terms of the East teams. Like they have an easier schedule. They play the White Sox a lot. They play the Royals. So I think one of those teams probably has the edge over the Blue Jays and the Orioles. So in this case, it would be the Guardians just because they're going to beat each other up. And if you play so many games in common like that, that's where it gets tough. So, I mean, I could definitely see the Blue Jays making the playoffs. Honestly, going into the year, I would have totally expected them to make the playoffs, probably as maybe the top wild card team. So it'd be a big time disappointment if the Blue Jays did not make the playoffs. But I think that it's pretty decent that the Guardians will end up in that final wild card spot. If the Orioles are able to kind of continue to hang in there, I don't think that the Orioles are going to make it. But if they're able to just kind of stay around, that means that they're probably beating the Blue Jays, and that's going to put the Blue Jays in a very tough spot. So that's probably all I got. But anything else, guys, before we take off out of here?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to touch on that. One of the main reasons I did end up picking the Blue Jays is because they play all division games the next month besides 2 series, and it's against Pittsburgh and Texas. So I feel like that's a free 4, 5, 6 wins. And I think that they're better than Baltimore. So I think that they can win 6 or 7 of those 10. And I think that they play Boston series to end the season. And I think that they're better than Boston. So it'll pretty much come down to, can they go 500 against the Yankees and Tampa Bay? And I think they can. So that's just one of the main reasons I picked the Blue Jays. And I guess the good thing about baseball is we will see.
Yeah, I'm there with you. So I think that's probably going to do it for today's episode. Thank you guys all for listening. None of us will be on tomorrow on AFS, but there will be an NBA show done by Makana tomorrow night. So if you guys want to tune in for that, make sure to do that. But I think that's going to do it. So thank you guys for hopping on. Thanks for joining. And that's going to do it for tonight. So have a great night. And hopefully the Padres are able to hang in with the Dodgers this weekend.